One more time. All right. Greetings, adventurers. DM Kurt. I am here to review Dungeon Crawl Classics by Goodman Games. Check out that old school style art. I'm not going to give you an art tour, but next inset cover, and we're old school. We're going old school. All right. If I gave you a tour of art, it'd last quite a while. So, I'm flipping through here, and I'm first reminded of Moldvay Basic. Okay, I just got that vibe. Flipping through. So, in the introductions, they let you know that this is a D20 based role-playing game, but instead of your normal set of dice, you need to use your normal set of dice plus a set of Zochi dice, Z-O-C-C-H-I. And that means you're adding to your normal D4, D6, etc. You're adding a D3, D5, D7, D14, 16, 24, and 30. I have a couple of those. You can also make do with other dice, like for a D7, you take a D8 and you ignore the 8s. Reroll 8s. Okay. The reason they do this is instead of using either advantage, disadvantage, or instead of using a massive chart of here's all the different situational modifiers and just use whichever ones apply, which could be multiple. They just use, okay, you're going to use a larger or smaller die than you usually do to reach the same target number. Okay, I'm not a big fan of the whole die chain system, but that's the thing. And some people love it, and I'm going to stay neutral on it. I just don't do it. Okay. There are only 7 classes, and they use race as class. So, you can play a human who is a wizard, thief, cleric, or fighter. Did I get all 4? Okay. Or you can play a dwarf who is essentially a fighter with some underground skills. You can play an elf who is a fighter wizard type. Or you can play a halfling who is a thief. This doesn't really mean that all dwarves are warriors. I mean, they have their own little society. They're going to have some priests in that society. They're going to have some this, that, and the other. But of the few that come out of those insular societies, the ones that come out adventuring are generally of this type. So this is kind of the personality of their culture. And that's kind of my take. Okay. There are only 3 saving throws: fortitude, reflex, and willpower. So this is not something I've usually dealt with. So you're looking at your 5e, it's saving throw by attribute. I make a charisma save, I'm making a dexterity save, etc. And for the games I used to play, it was make a save versus spell, save versus breath weapon, saving throw by attack type instead of by attribute. Okay. There are no backgrounds, only just an occupation that might suggest what your character did before becoming an adventurer. The occupations suggest rather than codify what types of knowledge and talents your character possesses. So if you say, I used to be a sailor, okay. It's just assumed you probably can tell the DM, yeah, I can swim, and yes, I can tie knots and ropes. You just kind of role play that out, think it out at the table. Cool. I like that. That's just having a brief little description instead of having a list of rules for that particular little space in your character. Spells are roll to cast, so you can fumble a spell and not be able to use it, or it'll go off, which then you can probably recast it later instead of the whole fire and forget Vancian system you usually get. Okay, you will roll your attributes down the line in order, not just assign them to whatever attribute you want. So your character generation is more random that way. You're going to pick a character class that's based off of whatever you feel your best rules are, or where they go appropriately. There is a luck attribute, which is kind of different. You can permanently burn points off of your luck and use those to influence a die roll. Semi-permanently, you may have a way of replenishing those. Or you use the modifier off of your luck attribute onto a certain type of roll. So you roll you determine how many luck points you have, then you roll on a table, and it'll tell you this character will always be able to use their luck attribute modifier towards this. And that may be saving throws, it may be attack rolls to hit with missile weapons specifically, it may be whatever, but it's one you just happen to be lucky at one particular type of thing randomly. Kind of cool. Yes, I got notes. Okay. Ascending armor class instead of descending. I mean, if that's a big sticker for you, I prefer it, but that's just me. There's a critical fumble table. I'm not generally into that. Yeah, I generally don't like that, but this one may not be so bad. Their critical hit matrix situation. So, they have a whole bunch of critical hit tables. And if you're higher level, you're more skilled, and you're likely to pull off more huge, devastating critical hits. So that's kind of cool. I might snag that for other games. Yeah, character generation funnel. This could be fun. So it's optional. Okay, you can choose to make 4 level 0 characters, and they suck. Okay, and then you and your DM and all the other players who chose to do this will play a one-shot game, or maybe 2 or 3 sessions. Who knows? You'll all play a game where a whole bunch of these 0 level characters get killed off. And then whichever one is the strongest, who is the last survivor, that becomes leveled up to level 1, and then you play your campaign from there. Sometimes a game like that can be a lot of fun. It's optional, but throwing it out there, I think that's kind of cool. The experience points table, I like this. I like the fact that they took 1 XP table for all the classes. This is something you see in a lot of modern games. You didn't always see that in the older games because they wanted to balance the character classes by using the experience table. So where in order to get in order to get a 5th level wizard, well, those were as powerful as a 7th or 8th level rogue. So we just jockey the progression accordingly. It's like, why not just make the classes equal? Simple, straightforward. Warriors can do a thing called Mighty Deeds of Arms. Warriors and dwarves. Dump truck. Anyway, so you'll have special attacks that you can do. Disarming attacks, blinding attacks, tripping and shoving attacks. And those are Mighty Deeds of Arms that only the really talented martial characters can do with their skill at weapons. That's cool. That's cool. There was a it's almost like a mini game. Okay, there's like 3 pages on spell duels, where a wizard can challenge another wizard to a spell duel, and it has its own set of rules of casting and counter casting and such. Yeah. You ever see Harry Potter where they do their zapping each other with the wands, and the one gets knocked off the table, and okay. The book came with 3 ribbons in it for placeholders. Neat. And yes, it is a weighty tome for like 30 some odd bucks. Big heavy thing. That's the entire game, by the way. The entire game for $39.99, or whatever your game shop wants to charge you. Whereas certain megacorp places want to charge you like 50 or $60 for just the player's handbook of their game, with monster manual and DM's guide sold separately. So there you have that. In the end, with all these reviews, I have to ask myself a few questions. Is it worth the money? Price-wise, yeah, it's worth the money. You get a lot. Would I play in a DCC game? Sure, if somebody else wanted to run it. Would I run a DCC game? I wouldn't, just because somehow it just doesn't really want it. It just isn't for me. I would pick parts out of it, like the critical hit tables, for example, and consider throwing those in other games. I'm just not into this style of gaming anymore so much. There's other old school clones that have been around that maybe intrigue me a little more. But overall, if this is your jam, I would say it's a pretty good option. Really good option, actually. I think this and Shadow Dark really are probably going to be the top two contenders for this particular subset of fantasy gaming. Anyway, that's just where I'm at. I know this is going to probably get some hate in the comments, but there it is. DM Kurt, out.